Yeah.
Good evening, good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you're at. I hope that you're more prepared than we are at the moment.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No.
It's,
Look, I don't even have my professional lighting going. Hang on. We got to do this. That
your
fills
microphone's
out.
working. That's good.
Oh, good. I'm glad I'm on the right mic. After I disabled every other mic on my system after that one time. Okay, that's good. These need to potentially turn off. I don't remember. Is it? That's better, right? This is, yeah, that's more contrasty. Okay, no, I think we're good. Oh, hang on. My Cameo cat is trying to get in here and make an appearance. Hi, Cameo cat. I promised on the Instagram today that we'd have a cameo cat, a cat cameo.
Oh, okay. Fair play.
Yes, there we go. All right, seconds in, and we have a cat cameo already.
Well, that'll keep our Instagram followers happy.
That will keep them happy. It keeps me happy because if the show's going downhill, I can just, very quickly reach out and pet her, and it soothes me.
I was about to say, just be very careful about how you phrase the next 5 words out your mouth.
Oh, geez. All right. Let's see here. So maybe kill that just a little bit. There we go. All right. Yes, Cameo Cat.
Does Cameo Cat have a name?
Cameo Cat does have a name. Her name is Serling.
Ah, good. Oh, sorry. Your mum's in the chat and she's just said, hey, Serling. So that'll be why.
There we go. Yes, yay, Serling, Cameo Cat. So Barry, we cool show topic tonight. Oh no, am I frozen?
Oh, you are frozen.
Oh geez, this hasn't happened in weeks.
I was going to say, I thought we'd got rid of all your internet beef.
You know what? I think it might be my internet. I don't know. We'll see here if it picks back up in a second.
There's no change to you. Normally you get a bit of a wobble on your sound quality as well, and you haven't got that. So
no. Okay, interesting. So maybe it is just, I don't know. I'm glad we're figuring this out in the pre-show.
Why we do pre-show.
This is why we do pre-show, and we don't just start and go live because it would be disastrous most of the time.
So.
Okay, it's not getting better.
I realize I've been rude. I've been talking about you without saying hi. So hi, Linda. How are you? Your camera's broken.
Yeah, I guess so. Give me a minute. I'll reset it. Let's see if that works. No, probably not. Okay. I really need to rethink how I do this because I have to pull back the curtain. I have a dock that I plug in my everything to and
now you've gone completely.
And am I still there?
Yeah, you came back.
I'm back.
Died. Yes.
Okay.
You're back there, but you died.
Yeah, that I switch between. Hello. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I think
maybe
might have a lag.
Okay. No, I can hear you. And there I am.
Oh, there we go. Hello.
So
long.
Yes. Oh wow, is there a lag? That's not great.
So when you finish hearing me say this, you should say, yeah, I got it.
Yeah, I got it.
Oh, there we go. No lag anymore. That's good.
No lag. Okay, that's good. You know what's not great is that now I am having difficulty hearing myself in my own ears, which is also not good.
I can hear you, so that's
yes, I know.
fine.
I can barely hear you. Is the problem?
Oh.
So I think there's something going on with my headset or something.
Or have I done something wrong?
No. It's on my end because I can't hear myself either. Oh, okay. I just needed to redo. Okay, no, we're good. Okay. Wow, all that. Hey, so what I was mentioning was we got a great show. Robots in. Well, it's beyond robots.
I would say it's robots, isn't it? It's no matter what it's in, it's just robots that makes it cool.
Robots makes it cool, although it is beyond robots. We're talking about technology in the food industry, really.
Yeah, yes.
So, yeah, cool topic. It'll be fun.
Okay, so we already.
Oh, don't do that. We just started, Barry.
I know. Like I said, it's been one of those. I was going to say days, potentially weeks,
months, years. Let's just keep going back. Where did it really start? You said I'm your therapy. Where did this? Tell me about your childhood?
Oh no, we don't want to go there. I it's such a boring childhood, so that's not true actually. But compared to what you expect in therapy, where you get you're expected to come out with how you're beaten and thrown down coal mines and stuff. I didn't have so much of the coal mines of the beating.
Well, that's a good thing.
Yes, coal mines get very dirty. Right, that's cool.
So, fun story for you. I was up late last night, as you do, organizing the content that we have for Human Factors Minute. So our patrons will appreciate this. And I was crunching the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want to take a guess at if we were to write all the topics that we had written out today, how far out in terms of content we'd be?
6 months.
That's a good guess. That is okay. So 6 months is just under what we have planned.
Yeah. Okay.
And so we're planned out until about March of next year. We usually do these big sweeps of plans that encapsulate a year. So we plan a year at a time based on the content that we've identified ahead of time. But that content that we've identified is going to take us through, once we've set it in stone, organized everything, is going to take us through June of 2024.
Wow.
So 2 years of content, basically.
That's pretty good.
That's really good. I was really happy. And that's before we actually go through our backlog and look at stuff and say, okay, is this an idea really? We kind of categorize them into two buckets. We say, do we know what we would write for this thing? Or is this just a rough idea of something that we need to refine before we actually sit down and write it? And once it gets to that, writing stage, then we can consider that in the plan. If you consider the stuff that we have ideas for that we could potentially put in there, then we have I don't know, until 2025, 2026, lots of content.
So it'd be interesting because I was doing a bit of promotion to ergonomists in Iran the other day of this podcast. So I've been doing some bits of work over the past year with them in terms of did some presentations on ergonomics and that type of thing. And then they've asked me recently they asked me about a month ago to do a written interview for their student ergonomist magazine. And I completely, as with everything else that seems to be happening at the moment, I didn't get that back in time. Anyway, I got that finally finished and sent off yesterday. And so, yes, they'll go. I'm in a WhatsApp group with Iranian students as well, which is fine, except they all write in Persian, and WhatsApp doesn't do Persian to English translation. And so the only time I know that they're speaking to me is because it just shows how ignorant I am. They're very good at writing messages in English to me. Or if I drop a message in there, then they all translate it, or somebody translates it for them, and it all works. I've got no idea what they're saying for the rest of the time. They could be saying very nasty or very nice things about me, and I wouldn't know the difference.
Well, hopefully it's very nice things.
I don't know. I'm gonna say.
Let's see. Well, I'm looking at their website now because I just thought of another idea for a Human Factors Minute.
Always on the job.
Look, I've also built a tool so that way we can start capturing them and having them dump into our backlog for refinement. So that way We treat our human factors minutes like a Scrum process. Really.
Yes,
I mean we do.
It's ideal for Agile.
It really is.
And that's the other thing I did this week was review some Agile guides for HR projects. Or the application of human factors into Agile projects, which was interesting for all the wrong reasons. We've got one more thing as well, haven't we?
What's it?
No, not one more thing. It came from.
It came from. Yes, those are good. If you want to look those over, I meant to. Refine those so that way they read better on the show tonight. Let's see here. This is Iranian Ergonomics and Human Factor Society. Interesting. Cool.
Talking about tools and stuff, I found a new social media manager.
Oh, what do you use?
Hero Post, which, unlike, so it's not too dissimilar to Hootsuite and all them sorts of things.
Okay.
But it came up with an offer of, you can lifetime, one of these things, lifetime thing for, I think it was $150, something like that.
50? 150?
150.
Oh, okay.
And so I was like, well, it's not cheap, but it's not massively expensive. So I watched a couple of videos on it and all that sort of stuff. And actually, in terms of being able to schedule and do stuff across platform, it seems to be really quite nice. You can pull in RSS feeds and get it to publish RSS feeds and bits. But I need to have a day, because what I want to do is to be able to schedule stuff. So say I'm having a bit of a slight planning embarrassment with my podcast at the moment, and I want to be able to fill some of that gap with previous episodes, or even just filling gaps, like where alternative weeks I can plug an old episode. I want to be able to schedule all that stuff in advance, and it'll allow you to do that. And it'll allow you to do analysis of hashtags and for combination hashtags and things like that.
What's it called?
So, Hero Post.
Hero Post.
Yeah. So if you go to heropost.io, so there's elements of it that are clunky, and I haven't, like I said, I needed probably about half a day to sit down and really bust it out. But on the face of it, it seems okay. So I've got like a bunch of Facebook accounts, Twitter accounts, LinkedIn accounts, and what else have I got on here? And I think YouTube. And you can do publish to all, and it'll work out whether you can publish to them all. I think it could be smoother, but then if you wanted to be completely smoother, then you're paying for the other ones, Hootsuite and things like that. So
that's so interesting that you got it for $150, because I'm looking at this simple, transparent pricing, $497 for 6 months, or $997 for 1 year.
Yeah, well, this is why they said they had it as a special offer.
Oh.
Let me just, which I found through Facebook. Actually, I'll see if I can send you the link.
Lifetime sale. There it is. Yeah, I see. Okay, it popped up. Yeah, right in front. Yeah, I should have seen that. I clicked out of the modal.
Okay. It might have been $180 or something, but it was around that sort of price. So.
Yeah. 200 here in the States.
It wasn't that much. It charged me in US dollars. So
I wonder if the conversion rate was different then, since our market has been wild this week.
Perhaps.
Let's see here. Wow, yeah, that's a great deal, actually.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these things that if it works, then brilliant. Then I think it could be powerful enough for what I use it for. And a whole bunch of the videos I watched were mixtures of people who were, content creators, a bit like us, all the way through to commercial people who are using it for like commercial companies.
Yeah.
and nobody said it was absolutely perfect. It wasn't an complete absolute winner, but for the price, good enough.
Yeah.
I mean, already we're just playing with it a couple of times. I can see some things that I would like to change, or at least customize, so you can see all the different platforms. Because it'll do Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Telegram, Tumblr, Reddit, VK. I know what's VK.
VK. Is that some like social media in?
It might be Russian.
Oh yeah, could be.
I'm going to Google that because I don't know what it is.
European social network. Russian online social media. Yeah. Okay. There you go.
Yeah. Let's not use that. YouTube, Google My Business, which is disappearing anyway. So Google are taking the My Business function away. But yeah, you can. But then once you've got all these groups, you can actually set them up as posting groups. So if you just wanted to set stuff just to, in my case, 1202, I can do that. Or if I want to set it to my personal business, K-Sharp stuff, I can do that. But you can watermark. Yeah, it seems to be, there's stuff around it that seems to be quite good. Which I need to play with.
We're already in deficit spending for the lab, so I can't justify it right now. Although that's a great deal, and maybe that'll come back. I don't know. You let me know.
Yeah. I think it will come back. I think it's possibly their marketing technique. Where they're like, you've only got 3 days to go, and I'm fairly sure I've seen this off before.
Okay. Yeah,
and I'd had maybe 3 or 4 glasses of wine and decided to spend it without realizing what I'd done, and then the next day I go my account and going, so hero post, what's that then? How do you
what did I do?
Oh dear, you better be good. Yes. That's the other thing I've been doing today is playing around with networks. I'm online managing my internal networks online through app control. Quite clever. Only for inter-network geekery. But,
I'm cleaning up these it came froms to make them snappier.
Oh, okay.
So by the way, we are now on TikTok. If you are watching us, we are on the TikToks, that thing that is the social media sensation that's hitting the nation.
I think it hit me quite a while ago, but so I need to find us and follow us.
We're a little late to the TikTok game, but look, like we it's my one more thing this week, so I'm not going to spoil too much, but we've got quite a few views on there. More than any other platform, I guess, outside of our podcasting analytics. With like these numbers are oh yeah, hey, Barry Kirby started already following you. There it is. Yeah, so outside of our podcasting numbers, these are kind of where we're breaking through the most in social media. So anyway, I'm saying this because we are we're republishing some of our it came froms, and so these are pretty great pieces of content, I think, for that format. They're short enough, but still, and we've been doing the news reads too. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm fairly sure I said that ages ago, and you just didn't believe me.
What's just that? Saying... it came from. Yeah, I know. Well, I think we talked about it at a lab meeting, but I think we just never.
We did more recently. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see here. Okay. I'm looking here at these. It came froms. For that general. We're gonna ditch the second half of that question. Make it snappier. We're gonna very ambitious project.
All these people worrying about bias.
I know. Let's see here.
Just don't worry about it.
I hate correcting grammar on these posts.
Yeah, I had an interesting thing yesterday, where we've been doing a bit of work, and the client has done all the data collection. We're just doing the
analysis.
Yeah. And one thing we were playing around with is word art. The word clouds. And I'm like, right, okay. But then
what tool do you use for word clouds?
Depend. I'm playing around with 4 or 5 different ones at the moment. I've sort of got you almost do just a search on whose tools are out there, but I'm finding some different ones that are better than others. But I'm not sold on any one yet. But I hope to be in the next couple of weeks. Because I want one to keep on going back to. Because there's one that does some very basic stuff, but I think it's quite honest in what it does. Some of them I find push too far into the art side of things, rather than giving you a decent comparator. But one of the things I was trying to work out this week is if people. It was an open question, and actually the question itself is kind of irrelevant. But different people were giving slightly different answers, and including spelling mistakes and stuff like that. And in this case, the spellings were kind of relevant, but then the client wanted all the data cleaned up, so corrected all the spelling. And I was like, well, but you've asked for an open answer and for people to give their own spin on it because you wanted their individuality, and then now you're putting them back into a box. Is that the right thing? I'm sure that's what you want. And obviously they're the client; they choose what they want, and that's what we're giving them. But it got to thinking about it. Was I doing the right thing?
Yeah.
Which answer was yes, because they paid us. But
yes, yeah, there you go.
But in terms of the diving into it, was I representing the data as well as I should have been? So.
Yeah, interesting question. I often, it's like when you get a bunch of data back. I mean, we'll talk about the specific answer. Like, I really want to dig into managing expectations and communication about your role, others' roles in a setting like this, because I think it's really critically important to communicate that stuff. This one's a long one. I can't really.
So you can't really.
Sure. It needs all the context. Like, I don't know.
It does.
Anyway, yeah, no, I think it's some fun questions tonight. We were talking about automation and how I'm automating these show notes now. I found a bug, something that I need to figure out how to fix in the automation, where it won't generate the notes unless we have 3 it came froms.
Oh, right.
So,
okay.
So I need to find them up front and throw them in. Thankfully, I've been kind of keeping tabs on them in our we have a tracker that we use. So I've been going through and liking all those. Let's see here. Purge after. There we go. That's the command? I think that's the command. There it is. All right. See, and I've made it so that way in Discord now I can clear out all the old stuff, and you just get this wall of stuff here. Anyway, processes, procedures.
Yes, we like them.
Continuous improvement. Yeah, all that stuff.
Purge command.
Purge command. So I feel like there's a way to search GIFs. Maybe not. What's a good GIF to throw in our Discord that says stop? Stop GIF. I'm looking for that. Yeah, you know what? There's one over the cat. I'm gonna take the cat.
The stick man with the big stop sign.
So there's a Michael Scott one. Stop it. Yeah, I like that. You know what? I'm gonna take that one. I'm gonna copy image. Throw that one in there. We'll see how that does. If that draws attention to this post because I did put just in a bunch of lines. Maybe not. Anyway, whatever. All right. What a fail. All right. That's okay. We still have the show to go, so we can always fail further.
Oh, that's true, yes. The only way is indeed down.
Mm-hmm. You know what? Although, if our days have been rough and our expectations are low, can we only fail upwards?
That's true. I like the possibility.
No, it's a question I'm asking. Can we only fail upwards? Because I don't want to... I want to set the expectation of us potentially failing upward. I don't want to set that expectation. I want to ask. I'm asking a question.
Oh,
is it a fail upwards if we're already at the bottom, or have we discovered more to the bottom?
What you mean? Will we just start digging?
Will we start digging more and find that we are indeed not at the bedrock?
I'll tell you in about an hour's time.
Okay. please keep me informed.
Oh, another annoyance is I meant to get. So I've got because I moved my mixing desk over to my right-hand side because of my desk layout. Mm-hmm. The cable for my headphones now goes underneath my arm, which is just slightly irritating.
Yeah.
And I've been meaning to buy an extension cable to go out the back of that and go, so I can fit it under my desk so it comes back out this side. And I haven't done that. Instead, I've bought more expensive things than I should have done. Mm-hmm. But I shall do that later.
Yeah, like what, a social media suite? Is that?
Yeah, just like that. Yes. Yeah. And a new manager switch for my network, which I don't actually need. I realized today. It's only so I can see it on my phone and see it on the app on my phone and go, oh, look, it's on my phone. Isn't it awesome?
Oh boy. All right. Okay. I'm cleaning off all the stuff that I don't need up and out to distract me from the show because I have enough distractions elsewhere. Mm-hmm. I started using multiple desktops for this.
What, with the Windows thing?
With Windows thing, yes.
Okay. So does that work?
Well, so I think what it does is it compartmentalizes all the stuff that's running in another desktop and I don't know, shuts it down virtually, but doesn't actually shut down the process. Right. So if I look at my my Google Chrome usage, which has a million different tabs open, it is less right now than it I mean, it's still high. It's still very high. But it's less memory, less CPU than it normally is when I have it open in this view than if I were to change desktops. It's nice because then I can really, reduce what I'm looking at on screen, which is I have my Google Chrome tabs, but they're for the podcast. I got Restream here. I got the notes here. I got, Discord up over here in case we need anything. I have my task list off to the right, so that way I can see what we need to do next. Or really, it's the post-show stuff. All the stuff.
I've just hovered over my multi-desktop, and I've clearly thought about this because I've got one that is called podcasting. And so I've clearly thought about doing it and just not done it.
See, what I end up happening, what ends up happening to me is that I get sidetracked with stuff. So I had, a bunch of random things pop up in chat or whatever today, and what happens is now I'm looking at all these resources up on my tabs, and I'm like, no, the intent was to keep it at a certain number of tabs and only certain tabs. I should go to the other desktop for that. And so it really doesn't work for those interruptions in a workflow. All right. It's just about time, Barry. So I think we're going to take a quick 30-second break while this intro plays. And we'll be back to talk about robots and stuff in the food industry. Yeah, I think that's where we're at.
Let's do it.
All right. So we'll be right back right after this.
Welcome to Human Factors Cast, your weekly podcast for human factors, psychology, and design.
High energy. Hi, everybody. And welcome back to Human Factors Cast. This is episode 245. We're recording this live on May 12th, 2022. I'm your host, Nick Roome. I am joined today by Mr. Barry Kirby.
Very high energy, Barry Kirby. Good evening.
Very high energy. Perfect. Hey, we got a great show for you all tonight. We're going to be talking about human-robot interaction and really technology in general and how it's going to change the food industry. And later, we're going to answer some questions from the community about combating disinformation through human factors, HCI, UX, all that stuff. We're also going to be talking about preparing for graduate school if you're gaining research experience is not an option, and the struggle we all have with scope creep. But first, here's some programming notes. Last week, I messed up this schedule royally, so I made sure that this week it is correct. So upcoming, we have, on the 19th, we have a normal episode for you all. On the 26th, we're going to provide some coverage of EHF. Barry has some wonderful folks who have interviewed in, called in to 1202. We're going to be sharing some across, and we're going to be sitting down talking about that. And on the 2nd of June, we're going to be off, and then we'll be back for a normal show back on the 9th of June. But Barry, what's going on with 1202? Still summer hiatus? What's up?
I've got no idea. Just nothing's happening. No, in reality, I've been with work and everything. I've been snowed under. And I've been lining up some awesome interviews. So we've got some awesome interviews coming up, and we'll be back into a proper schedule again in the next couple of weeks.
Awesome. And I'm looking forward to your EHF coverage that's coming soon too.
Yes, hopefully right. I've got all them interviews. They're all done now, with the exception of one, which is Amanda. And so we're going to have a specific show on that as well. And if we can get this all done right, and there's no reason why we shouldn't, because we're very competent people, we'll release it all in the same week. So we'll have my stuff go out on the Monday, we'll have this go out on the Thursday, and it'll all be like seamlessly planned amazingness.
Seamless podcast synergy. All right, we know why you're all here. You're here for the news, so let's go ahead and get right into it. Yes, this is the part of the show where we talk all about human factors news. Barry Kirby, where's the beef?
Oh, is that how we're starting? Okay, so the story this week is from butcherbots to Robo burger flippers. 6 ways the food industry is turning to tech in 2022. So restaurants and food suppliers around the world are taking lessons really learned from the pandemic and in many cases adapting them technologies to more permanent solutions. An article by Gizmodo details some of the examples that were used in the pandemic that may have a long-lasting impact. And so I'm just going to quickly go through these 6 different 6 different technologies. So within food prep and cookery itself, Mizo Robotics made a splash during the pandemic with its burger flipping bot, aptly dubbed Flippy, which serves around 300 burgers a day. But also Mizo have come up with another bot called Chippy, which, funny enough, focuses on the preparing of tortilla chips. We also go into robot butchery, where meat processors are investing in autonomous butcher robots capable of deboning and butchering meat. The industry reportedly hopes that these autonomous systems could one day reduce workplace injuries associated with the butchery business. The pandemic acted as a real accelerant for these butcher bots because the journal that we got this from noted that since the crowded factory floors were a hotbed for COVID-19 transmission. Then we also talk about automatic doorman, and this is looking at the use of facial recognition because that has whilst it's proven contentious, grocery stores and bars and them sort of places, particularly in the UK, but also in the US, are trying to use the tech to guess their patrons' ages. Online ordering, as we know, was already around before the pandemic, but actually during the pandemic, it surged in online ordering, promoting an uplift in restaurants developing and enhancing their own apps. As an example, a number of fast food chains are also now using location tracking data to keep tabs on the diners or the couriers in order to have their food ready for pickup just at the right moment. Self-checkout. Cashierless self-checkout systems have existed for a number of years in many grocery stores, but also fast food chains like McDonald's have used them now for quite a lot for ordering. But they could see even wider adoption this year, thanks in part to the pandemic habits and tight labour markets. And finally, something that has really exploded over here in the West is QR codes. They've been used as replacements for physical menus or for direct line for diners to order their meals. Last year, it saw a 750% increase in downloads over the span of 18 months. It's believed companies using QR codes could potentially save between 30 and 50% on labor costs alone by reducing their number of servers. So, Nick, that's a very quick overview. What's your thought on the rise of the robot chefs?
Yeah, so a couple thoughts here. One, robot overlords, blah, blah, blah. Second thought was looking for thumbnails this week was made me very hungry, obviously looking for a lot of food. And the third question, or I guess the first real point I had, third point here, is where's the human factors? And I made the joke at the top, where's the BHF? It's a visual gag because on the little ticker we have where's the BHF. Anyway, I feel like I had to explain that joke. So it's not really a joke anymore because I had to explain it. But here's the thing is when you look at the story at face value, you're like, okay, cool. Technology in food industry. I mean, what human factors where, but we got a great breakdown for you of exactly where this touches human factors. We're going to try something a little bit different in terms of the format tonight. But from a societal perspective, anytime there's new technologies, I feel like there's going to be a large pushback from some folks. And we can talk a little bit about that in society and culture. But Barry, before we move on, I want to get your initial thoughts on this article.
Yeah, I mean, obviously around technology and any sort of geekery, then I'm down with this. This sort of thing is really cool, and I love seeing it in action. But when you look at that wider thing, so I'm going to start pushing back right from the beginning, to a certain extent, because we sort of got to think about this in terms of, are we going to start losing artisan skills because of the within the restaurant business, within that type of thing? Are we just going to fundamentally forget how to cook, how to do some of this basic stuff in the grand scheme of things? If we talk about going out and having that restaurant experience, well, where's the humanity? Is it all just about getting that burger as quickly as you can in a fast food chain, or do you want that broader experience of having somebody creating your food, being presented with the food, and that type of thing? But then we do get into that whole bigger cultural bit about jobs of the future. Every time that is that constant pushback of whenever we get a level of automation, that's taken away somebody's job, apparently. Now, there is that wider discussion around, well, actually, are jobs just becoming different? But fundamentally, that is something that we are going to have to think about. It does lead you into conversations around things like universal basic income, what is the future of the workplace, and things like that. But that might be going a bit far for tonight. So do we want to go into our newly polished and new way of analyzing these stories and bust out the human factors domains?
Yeah, let's talk about human factors domains, because what we've done traditionally is, well, I guess we used to kind of have this approach, but then somewhere in the episode 200s, we kind of got to this approach of like, let's focus down a really specific rabbit hole, give some really interesting backstory about a specific aspect of a story, and then talk about it through the lens of the story. But I think really tonight, there's just so much interesting stuff here that we wanted to try it a different way. So we're going to take a look at these through various human factors domains and really kind of focus on that and really how it all impacts this story here in technology and food industry. And so the first thing we can kind of start with here is the obvious human AI robot teaming. There's going to be a lot going on here between the human actor and the robot actor in this space, especially when we talk about the technologies that focus on robots here, right? There's other technologies. You mentioned QR codes, you mentioned self-checkout. I'm talking about HRI right now. There's things that we have to consider, like where does the handoff occur from a human operator to a robot operator? If you think about like the butchering example, the robot butcher, well, how, when it's done, does the robot hand it over to you? Does it put it down and then you pick it up as a human? Where's that transfer? And how do you make sure that it's done safely? We'll talk about safety separately, but thinking about that handoff, where does it occur? Burger flippers, same thing. Do they set the burgers aside for you to sort of put them on a bun? Do you have an assembly maker then at that point, a sandwich artist? And then, it's kind of like all that stuff. And then, of course, there's the seminal trust in the robot's ability to do their job. Does the human trust a robot butcher with a knife that they will not cleave them and hurt them? We can talk about safety later too. So there's a lot of things going on here just from a high level human AI robot teaming perspective. Barry, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think this is going to be one of the key bits, because normally when you go to like to a restaurant, it goes back to kind of what we're saying around, are you just wanting fast food thrown out at you, so you're going through your burger joint, and actually it's just an assembly of ingredients, it's wrapped and then presented to you. That probably would be fine. I don't know, as a gut feel, that would be fine. That would be kind of what we would expect. But then if you're going to, like, say, quite a posh restaurant, you could sort of see some of the cooking being done in the back by some level of automation. You've got chefs there, you've got automated, so you've got robot chefs doing their thing. How would they all work together as a team? Because restaurant kitchens get very busy, very hectic. How would all that work? But then is there another element there? Because there's this rise in the restaurants that you have a chef out the front, don't you, where they're doing fancy knife work, they're doing showing how they can cut meat up in different ways and cut the vegetables very fast and all that. Is there going to be an element there where you have the robot in almost the center of the room, and it being used almost as a display performance piece, cooking all that food, and then delivering out to people? How do we make all that work? And is that the sort of thing we want to be seeing? So I think how we engage with them is going to be a key element in all of this.
Yeah, I agree. Take it to personnel.
Right. So picking up the personnel piece is really about how is this going to involve people and affect people. So on the positive side, we've already talked about these going to have things like sharp things. We're talking about hot things. We're going to have the opportunities for being cut, for burns. What you do normally in a kitchen or a foodstuffs environment. It was already said that the meat processing places were rife for infection or transmitting infection. So having something like this approach actually reduces risk for people. It keeps people safer in a hazardous environment if everything goes to plan. It also reduces the number of people. If you look at a staffing side of things, reduces the number of people that a business needs to run. If you want a niche business or something like, say, like a burger joint, that type of thing, if you can get a lot more automated things, then you've got more of a chance of running a business and keeping your overhead low, because you're running with all this machinery. As I've kind of said a number of times now, in terms of that fast food bit, then that will probably fulfill the requirement of the people who are getting that sort of food. It will get that food quickly. It will be to the right sort of standard, when we'll talk about sort of the engineering design of it later on. But then we look at sort of like, as mentioned, does that fit what we have in terms of standard restaurant? Does that fulfill an experience? Which then leads you into that idea of what is that cultural thing around going out for a meal? What is it we expect from that? What is the social script around that? Is there anything you want to bring in on the personnel side?
Yeah, a little bit about social scripts, right? We have this kind of expectation as a society that we walk into a restaurant. I'm talking sit down here. And we sit down, we look at the menu that is handed to us, which we'll talk a little bit about in a minute here. But from the QR code side, it took me a minute to kind of get used to the QR codes. I expected to be handed a menu. My social script of understanding what happens when you sit in a restaurant is already sort of getting the perception of that is changing. And so what happens then when you have, more and more technology, more and more automation? Do you sort of stand in line at maybe a fast food restaurant, realize there's no cashier, and you have to go to a self-service kiosk? How long do you wait there before that is understood? How long do you sit at a table before you realize that that these menus are not being handed to you? There's changes that we will have to make as a culture, as a society. We can talk about society and culture later, about how we perceive these things. And so it's not just the people in the restaurant that are working there, but also the folks that are coming there as patrons. So let's talk a little bit about the way these places are set up, environmental design, right? I mentioned how long will you have to wait before you realize you have to go to self-checkout. You have to do a self-checkout for your food. Well, there's designing the spaces. You have to do some consideration around designing spaces for that self-checkout experience, right? Do you make it front and center? You do put it up against the register where the person traditionally was. So you still have an expectation of going up to the counter, pressing your buttons, getting your food, but so it's in the same place, just different way to interact with it. That's something we have to think about, right? If we put these robots like burger flippers, chip makers, meat choppers in the kitchen, we have to think about how that space is also designed as well. You know, in fast food places, those kitchens can be quite tiny. And so you have to really think hard about the way the robot is interacting with the things that it's doing. You know, does the burger flipper sit above the grill, or does it sit in front of it, obscuring kind of a walkway for others to kind of walk through? So that's something that you have to consider. You also think about in the future, right? This wasn't mentioned in the article, but I can imagine a world where we have delivery robots. So now instead of waiters and waitresses, we have delivery robots putting your food on your table for you. You have to design a space that is not only conducive to having a robot move through that environment, but also make it so that way they can quickly duck out of the way in case a human is coming. And also you have to consider whether or not that robot is, you know, handling food or any other delicate, let's say delicate objects on board, right? So just thinking about all this stuff, there's also the issue of making these robots visible in the environment. It's going to be an entirely different way to interact with these things that are not there now, right? We're changing those social scripts. We have to think about making those robots visible, but also that could be aesthetically unpleasing, right? You have a bright yellow safety vest, orange robot in this restaurant. Does it mess with the sort of environment, and what does that do for your experience? There's a lot to consider when it comes to environmental design. Barry, passing it back over to you. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think there's a whole bunch of stuff here that is done already, and we can take what's going to be really cool about this is just taking that innovation and move it in. So, you know, self-checkout, you know, there's famous burger joints that do that already, that I now use on a fairly regular basis. It took a couple of sessions to going into that restaurant before you're like, actually, you know, that's the way it's done. Would you want the same? Would you be happy with that same sort of experience in something a bit more high end? Again, that goes back to that social script,
right?
But this design of the kitchens, I think, is really interesting because if we're going to get it right, going back to the human AI robot teaming piece, we can't just design the robot to fit in around the human or the human to fit in around the robot. We've got to get into this co-design piece and make sure that we're making the best of both worlds, and basically using the right almost the right tool for the right job, and making that way, which is at the moment we do sort of have a bit of an attitude of, well, the robot's there, therefore the human has to move around it and be aware of it. With the development of what we're doing now, there's a lot more potential around good co-design. So I'm going to then go into the performance and training side of things. So really what we should be having here, the robots and things should give you a high level of performance. But that has to come with a low training burden, because we're not going to have experts around all the time to be able to manage with these robots. If they're well designed, if they're well engineered, they shouldn't have a high maintenance or a high breakdown threshold. So we should be able to go into the training element should be low. We have phones now that are very, very complicated. Nobody ever reads an instruction book for them anymore, and we're going to have to get there with that. However, when it does go wrong, it's a bit like we have spoken about this in terms of using autonomous vehicles. What happens when that goes down? You need to then step up to an alternative. So what's going to be that backup, and therefore how are you going to train your staff to deal with that type of thing? And then with that training element, we do need to train the operators to interact with the new technologies, and it's not just the employees, but how are the public expected to go into a place and know how much time are we going to give them, how much because there's going to have to be an element of promotion and thing around, look, we've got a new way of interacting. How long does that go on for? I think there is enough precedent out there. But I do remember going to a restaurant a number of years ago, and they tried to pioneer something along the remote side, but all it was a speaker and microphone in the center of the table. Now, as soon as we went in, I'm having to put a newspaper over the center of the table. I had no idea that I was meant to interact with this thing in that way, because it was hidden to me straight away because I'd hidden it by accident. We need to make sure that that it's well highlighted until it gets properly embedded as a true activity. So, is there anything you want to bring in here on performance and training?
No, I think you kind of hit it there. You know, the way in which we introduce this technology into the food industry is going to be critical, right? One time I went into a restaurant and there's this little tablet looking thing on the edge of the table that you can then pay for your meal at. And, you know, the first time I was like, oh man, that was this is a new thing. What does it do? Right. So there's like this element of discovery. And when you think about training personnel in the environment itself, or sorry, the employees, that makes sense. But then you have to make things sort of usable. We'll talk about usability a little bit later. Talk about sort of making things intuitive and usable for the people who you can't give training to necessarily. So let's jump in a little bit to sort of these communications privacy concerns. I mentioned, how do you communicate these changes? That is something, especially when it's from the orderer's perspective, you can't train them, right? It's a question. And you know, I mentioned the story earlier. Barry, did you get used to QR codes or menus quickly when they started introducing them? Because I didn't. I sat at a table for a while. I was expecting, you know, the waiter waitress to give me a physical copy.
No, I was. It was and it still is now. The whole using QR codes is, I just find it is a bit non-intuitive to a certain extent, unless it's well advertised, unless it's out there. I still see it as an addition. It doesn't still feel like a main process yet.
Right. Yeah, I feel like that is going to be something that's interesting to look at. We also have to look at sort of these privacy concerns. When you look at data collected on people, is that being communicated, right? Are your button presses on those little kiosks on the side being communicated to the patrons that data is being collected? I think there's kind of a mutual understanding, but then there's some of the other technologies going on that it's maybe less obvious, where you have that facial recognition. Is there anything in the environment that lets you know that you are being monitored via, you know, like there's the little signs that say this area is monitored by CCTV. Is there anything that communicates that your face is being analyzed by AI against a database? All that stuff. It's things that we need to think about. Mm-hmm. So let's any thoughts on communication privacy concerns?
Not really. I think you got most of it nailed. I think it is going to be really key, certainly in the early adopter phase. If you look at the innovation curve, that early bit of getting people on board, communication is going to be absolutely key. If we go into system safety and health hazards, a lot of this is kind of fairly obvious. You know, from kitchen should be kept clean, they should be kept sanitary. The food should be cooked to the right temperature for what it is, etc., etc. And all of this would still absolutely apply. It just needs to apply to the automation as much as it does the people. It is also about keeping operators safe. You mentioned earlier about how does the robot or whatever it is work in the kitchen, and how do we make sure people keep safe. Then there's the good design stuff around isolation, emergency stops. But robot wielding knives, any good movie that anybody's watched, that's something to be aware of, shall we say. But robots move. If we're doing it right, then robots move. We would expect them to either move or traverse around the kitchen, doing deliveries, as you mentioned earlier. That's all stuff that we need to think about. Now, I don't want to make it sound like I'm just saying safety needs to be done. It's obvious. It kind of is, but I don't think it's actually vastly different to the sort of things we should be thinking about already. We've just got a different factor in there. Do you think I'm being a bit blasé about that, or do you think there's more to consider?
No, I think you're right. I think, the more we kind of keep these environments in check, right? We kind of talked a little bit about an environmental design, but really those environmental factors as well as safety play in hand together. And I think the more we can think about where the human is at in any sort of one given moment, right? Whether they're walking to the restroom and potentially running into a robot in the hallway there, whether you are in the kitchen with a knife wielding robot there? Is it, is that behind a cage that they then, throw it over to you between a thing? It all kind of, those are considerations that we need to make from that perspective. And so I think you're absolutely right. Hit the nail on the head. Let's talk a little bit about usability, system evaluation, accessibility, because I think these are pretty big topics here, especially when you consider just in general the usability of these online ordering apps, right? You're thinking about people at home. There's some interesting things going on with those. That's again not a technology that we talked about in the main story, but something that we need to consider because those things are almost nefariously designed in order to get you to buy more, like having exclusive discounts on some of these things. And so the whole usability aspect of those online ordering decision-making systems, right? How do you help me make a decision about what I want? Everything looks the same. The usability of self-checkout, we need to look at that stuff, right? So how easily is it placed in the environment for others to understand where it's at? Or really how long before it times out after a user stops pressing it? So how long does the next person have to wait if the person just ahead of them gets frustrated and leaves? How do you communicate what's in your cart, all this stuff? So there's a lot of different things that we have to think about from that side of it. Now, I want to bring up a point from the chat here, question about AI potentially helping with accessibility, both for patrons and employees. This is by Buddha of Light. And so on our Twitch, I want to bring this up because this is a really important point from accessibility perspective. When you think about sort of making these things accessible, you need to consider everyone in your design. Really, you need to think about the people who may not be able to pull out a phone, or be able to understand some of the social cues around needing to interact with a QR code, or even from the perspective of an employee that is potentially unable to work with robots in a manner that is cooperative. Those are things that we need to consider as well. Barry, I want to pass it over to you. Any thoughts here?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because I guess that there's one element around the use of AI to help with that accessibility of itself. So, are we going to be able to use AI to help patrons access the service or the products that we are going to deliver? So, does that mean we can actually step back and be less prescriptive around how we order? So, you could actually just be turning around and saying, "I want some food," and it understands maybe more about you and can help you derive what it is that you actually want if you can't communicate in a more obvious way. Also, when you're looking at it from an employee perspective, would it shape, because we're already seeing it, if you can't engage or use the technology, does that mean you're just not employable? Is this going to have that sort of social impact? Or is it going to help us with people who are, maybe allow us to employ people who are more neurodiverse or with physical disabilities or whatever within the kitchens and actually use their skills to their most potential because they're supported by AI and by technology. It's an interesting one about it could go either way, I think. Depending on going back to the social construct and what the drivers are within that society.
Right.
Yeah, I think we could spend almost another episode just talking about this specific issue.
We could, one not last point, but one more point that, you could think about too is designing for those who are wheelchair bound. And so thinking about the height of some of these self-checkout systems. Do design something that's universal for, teenagers and folks in wheelchairs to be able to access these? Or do you have an ADA compliant wheelchair, not wheelchair, ADA compliant self-checkout system that is at a different height for those who are unable to reach it at the other quote unquote standard height, right? So there's other things that we can think about here, and you're absolutely right. We could break this down in a whole separate breakdown, but I want to hear a little bit more about engineering, Barry. You want to jump into that?
I'll take engineering, absolutely. The the engineering in this is going to be really interesting. I think a lot of it we probably already understand from doing that translation from different areas that use things like robotics and that already. But it's around making sure the engineering standard is up there and the systems engineering is there to make sure that they work, that 99% of the time, because the maintenance here is going to cost money. The hospitality industry it works on largely, I believe, fairly thin margins given, but a lot of repetition. So anything that you're doing with this, it needs to be a high level of uptime. But any maintenance that needs to be done, regular maintenance, then that needs to be easy to do. Again, we've talked about how to train people and all that sort of stuff. Then that needs to be really good, because if the maintenance is difficult, it'll get skipped, and that means then you're into more downtimes. But then you do need to step into what happens when they do fail. How do they fail safe? How do they fail in a way that a user or a human operator can then go and step in and either complete what was going on or gracefully degrade the service of the overall establishment. And we've talked about similar things to this again with the autonomous vehicles and how they come out of auto drive. And there were some really good papers done in the recent ergonomics conference around this very topic. And then the other bit is it's obviously going to be highly sanitized. And I guess we can draw some parallels here to like the health industry as well as other bits and bobs, but you can have some very high-end engineering things, but they need to be able to work in a way that is very clean because of the obvious. So that's a really high-level sketch through engineering, but I think there's a whole lot of stuff there that needs to play. Have you got any thoughts on that, or do you want to crack on?
Yeah, let's just go ahead and get in. We're running short on time. I want to make sure we have enough time to talk about the social, organizational, societal real impacts here, because for me, there's the question of how will society perceive these incremental improvements, right? If they happen over time slowly, I don't think there's going to be some pushback, but it won't be as big as if we make all these sweeping changes at once. Now, the article in Gizmodo is suggesting that these will all take place in 2022. I don't know if all of them will see the light of day in 2022, but these technologies exist. And when we use them in tandem, we have to think about what the interaction effects between them are for really understanding how people will see this. Well, you mentioned, at the top, is this the sort of beginning of the end for discussions about UBI or jobs in general? How do they change over time? I think this is a really important question to ask. And my sort of takeaway question for the motivations for implementing these technology, or really any technology, is what's the motivation behind it? Is it to reduce cost for the patrons, for the people who are buying the hamburgers, or is it to ultimately increase the profit for the C-suite? And cynical me says, increase profit for C-suite, but you did bring up the good example of having these technologies available. It reduces the number of overhead and therefore could make it more accessible to those who wanted to start their own business, because they don't need to hire as many people. They can just buy these robots and call it done. And so does it then further serve democratization of the food industry? Can more people get into this field because the technology makes it available? I don't know. These are just high-level questions. Barry, I want to hear about your thoughts and opinions on the societal, organizational changes here.
I think this is going to be a bit of a game changer, if I'm honest, in the way that we think about technology and technology adoption. Because in some of the other bits, if you're working in the factory realms, if you're working in manufacture and things like that, you've seen robots around now for quite a while. If you work in warehousing and logistics, you've seen robots and automation now for quite a while. But it's always kind of at arm's length. It's at work, or it's on the road, it's in the air, but it actually doesn't affect you sort of on a day-to-day basis that's really in your face. This will put it in your face. Actually, quite literally, if they get the programming wrong. But you'll take that, the food could be delivered to you completely automated. And what will that do to us as a society? This sector is, I believe, the biggest employer throughout the world. In the hospitality sector, this will not only it could make it safer, it could make it more efficient, but it could also put more people on the dole queue and in the job center. So what is it going to do? And I think it will be really interesting to see how it evolves. I think it could be really good. I think it could reduce costs for patrons. I think it could increase profit. Neither of them are a bad thing as long as we do it in the right way, and we make it go forward. So, yeah, I think it's going to be quite interesting, and I'm quite looking forward to it. Have you got any sort of? You mentioned the time. Have you got any sort of final thoughts on the overall article or anything else we should be considering?
Yeah, I mean, the society and organizational, all those points really could be tied up into its own discussion, its own episode, its own separate podcast series, whatever. There's just so much to think about with introducing new technology. And there's an interesting comment on the article on the website itself. It was a comment on remote cashiers and sort of it's almost like a medium or a midpoint between introducing like self-checkout technology outright and slowly transitioning into that adoption of technology where maybe you have remote cashiers where cashiers sitting at home at their computer and they're still cashiering, but they are presented on a video screen inside the restaurant, right? That might be one way to sort of drive adoption of these technologies from that societal view. When you think about how many places this could touch, that would be a lot more palatable for the those screaming they took our jobs, and then it would also be more palatable for those patrons coming into the restaurant saying, I don't know what to do here. Can somebody help me? And so it's an interesting point. I wanted to bring that up because the speed at which we adopt technology is also a critical factor for adoption of that technology. Barry, what about you? Any sort of last loose rounds on this?
Yeah, I guess just one final thought for me around, let's talk about the human factors of stuff in this. And there's been a recent review of human factors around food safety in Ireland. And actually their research showed that there's 86 closure orders in Ireland. So that's 86 establishments that are told to close every year due to human factors related issues, largely down to risk management of cooking and of storage. So clearly automation, robotics, and that can play a large part in stopping a number of them closures, because of like the use of technologies to do the appropriate sensing, the appropriate measures, and putting in that level of situational awareness that the appropriate decisions can be made in a timely manner. So just as a food for thought, there is definitely loads of scope there for human factors in all of this.
Food for thought. Was that a pun I heard? All right. Well, thank you. Thank you to our patrons this week, and not our Twitter followers, because actually they disagreed when our patrons actually outweighed them. For selecting our topic this week, thank you to our friends over at Gizmodo for our news story this week. If you want to follow along, we do post the links to all the original articles on our weekly roundups on our blog as we find them. You can also join us in our Discord for more discussion on these stories and much, much more. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back to see what's going on in the Human Factors community right after this.
Human Factors Cast brings you the best in human factors news, interviews, conference coverage, and overall fun conversations into each and every episode we produce. But we can't do it without you. The Human Factors Cast network is 100% listener supported. All the funds that go into running the show come from our listeners. Our patrons are our priority, and we want to ensure we're giving back to you for supporting us. Pledges start at just $1 per month and include rewards like access to our weekly Q&As with the hosts, personalized professional reviews, and Human Factors Minute, a Patreon-only weekly podcast where the hosts break down unique, obscure, and interesting human factors topics in just 1 minute. Patreon rewards are always evolving, so stop by patreon.com/humanfactorscast to see what support level may be right for you. Thank you, and remember, it depends.
Yes, huge thank you as always to our patrons. We especially want to thank our honorary Human Factors Cast staff, Michelle Tripp. Thank you so much for all your support. Hey, we have a website. Our accountant says to plug the website. We don't get any money from the website. I don't know why they're asking us to plug it. Anyway, there's all sorts of fun stuff over there on our website. I don't know if you know this, but we have detailed show notes, including links to any of the guests that were on this week. There's embedded YouTube videos on those episodes, so you can see once again how handsome Mr. Barry Kirby is. If you're regularly an audio listener, maybe check that out every once in a while. There's also our news roundups. I mentioned that. That's where we sort of get all of our news and put it all into one place for you. We have those weekly and a monthly roundup. We also post those kind of all over the internet, so follow us on social for that as well. If we ever do have guests on the show, we always have more information on those. There's ways that you can submit your own news story. So if you're a researcher that you want to be featured on the show, let us know. There's a link in the description of this episode or on our website. You can do it there. You can also search on our website. And I think that's one of the most powerful things our website offers is search. So you can actually look through all of our episodes, all of our news recaps, all of our deep dives, all of our Human Factors Minute content. See if there's a topic on the thing that you're searching for. And of course, there's always our conference coverage. We're always trying to put out more content in different types of ways. In fact, that is the goal of our digital media lab. So if it's been a minute since you've checked out our website, please go take a look at humanfactorscast.media, or we stole the domain, humanfactorspodcast.com. Barry is still salty about it.
No, I'm not.
All right. Well, why don't we go ahead and get into this next part of the show?
It came from.
Yes, this is the part of the show we like to call It Came From. This is where we search all over the internet to bring you topics the community is talking about. And no matter where you're watching, if you find these answers useful, give us a like to help other people find this content. That virality kind of helps. Anyway, we have 3 up tonight. This first one here is from The Last Milk Bender on the user experience subreddit. They say, how much do you think UX or HCI can help in combating disinformation spread and extremely polarized communities in digital platforms? Hang on to write, I'm just frustrated with the political turmoil in my country built on Facebook and TikTok's disinformation spread. Barry, we are now on TikTok helping with that disinformation spread. What do you think? How can Human Factors help?
I think everybody should go to the Human Factors Cast account on TikTok and just go and experiment with it and just see what you think. I think so. There's 2 elements to this. So the biggest way of spreading disinformation largely is through bots. And so that's where people have created effectively fake or automated accounts to push forward an agenda or certain words, or to give themselves more influence. So if we could allow people to see which, from an HCI perspective, which accounts are bots and which accounts are real verified people, then that would be a really good thing. Or just get rid of the bots completely. That would also be helpful. But some people use good bots use bots in a good way. It's only it's a bit of a sticky one. But if you knew which accounts were bots and which were real, that would help. The other side to this is we talk about that we have extremely polarized communities and things like that. That's people. That's the idea that actually people do have a broad variety of views, and you could argue that actually historically we've just never heard them before, because our only way of listening to them has been through what we've read in the press, in the printed or in the visual media. Well, now that we have all of these networks, all of these channels, all of these abilities, even for the likes of us to promote and spread the good word about Human Factors, we have that ability. We don't go through any quality checking or anything like that. We just come on and ramble about what we like to talk about. Everybody's now got that opportunity to become a content creator. So we might not like it, but actually I think it's one of these things that's been there for a long time. And it's actually what we need to understand in terms of we have to become better at influencing people about getting across our point and having grown-up discussions around what we think and why we think them, and become better at persuading, and not just demanding that people think in the same way as we do. I think it's scary for many people, because not many people realize that I think that maybe their neighbors had the views that they had, and this is almost I don't want to be as, it's almost like an age of enlightenment of people can have their views. The downside of this is people can have their views without ramification as well. So we lose a lot of that social structure, but I think that will probably be an entirely different episode. What do you think, Nick? Do you think there's easy ways of doing this?
Yes. So let's actually break down what's happening here with disinformation spread and these polarized communities. What's happening is that these social media platforms are built on outrage. They are built on engagement, and the things that drive engagement are things that are outrageous. Us here at Human Factors Cast, we don't really do anything outrageous, and therefore our stuff isn't surfaced in other ways, like, I don't know, things from Fox News that are very highly outrageous in a lot of ways sometimes. And so when you have these situations where content creators put out content and then it is engaged on at a rate that's higher than everything else, those algorithms behind the scenes say, oh, this is therefore more worthy content. More people engage with it. It gets promoted. It's a cycle, right? Then you have sort of so from a human factors perspective, behind the scenes, what we can do is democratize the algorithm itself in what we value as a society, as a culture, as a digital culture, to highlight importance on. Right? If enough people flag it as inappropriate, or enough people give us a thumbs down button, if things that are unacceptable to society, then maybe it'll be surfaced less. It is engagement, but maybe weigh that engagement against how much people dislike the thing, and hide it for the greater good. There's also the consideration of sort of the controls on the user perspective. Right, I already mentioned giving controls about thumbs down, that type of thing. But then there's also sort of really how we, with respect to the communities, right? So how we engage with those communities. We are surfaced a piece of content that looks at maybe an obscure topic, but they choose the things that are sort of semi-believable. It's kind of like a gateway drug, if you will, to these communities that are often damaging to society. And so it's usually not the people that you think that go into these society. I'm thinking like QAnon here, right? And I think I might get flagged with that term, but it's important to talk about. So if you think about Q supporters, right, they are often fed something that has some sort of level of credibility, or sort of what if, right? And then they engage with it, and then it puts them further into a certain category, and then these algorithms are feeding the people this content without them even realizing that they have now created a bubble for themselves. And so what you'll see, I don't think people are that polarized in reality. I think what happens is that these digital media platforms are pushing society into these bubbles, which drive the most engagement. And so really it all comes down to, can we rate these sources as a society and say, yes, this is credible, this is not credible? The research done here is sound research. The research said by these guys is just stuff that they babbled on a podcast. Are we an authoritative source for this? And I understand that us in that algorithm would be deprioritized to other things like scientific journals. The importance is that with things like science and communication, we have to be able to marry those two concepts, because the better we can communicate scientific fact as real information instead of disinformation, the better we can be about sort of communicating on these online platforms. Anyway, soapbox down. I want to open it one more time. Barry, any other closing thoughts on that one?
Yes, we need to do a podcast on this, because I think it's really interesting, because there is an element here of one around. I completely agree with you on the scientific fact bit, but on the other bit around what it is that the algorithms only work because we know, or the algorithms know that that's what people want to see. So that people will. I mean, this is where the TikTok algorithm, I think, is really clever. Where you get people talking about what type of TikTok are they seeing, because it is constantly evolving to give you the sort of content that you're watching. So, we kind of get what we ask for to a certain extent, to quite a large extent on a lot of platforms. So I think there is an element we perhaps give ourselves a lot more credit, that we think that everybody's very nice and stuff. But yeah, I think there is an element of we get what we pay for. Anyway, we should really move on.
Yeah, we should. I should have put that one last. All right. This next one here is, aside from gaining research experience, what can I do to prepare for PhD programs? This is by A Wagon on Human Factors subreddit, which we always love to see. They say, "Hi, everyone. I'm a mechanical engineering student. I recently decided that I want to go to grad school for human factors. I have 2 years left in undergrad, but until I learned about human factors, I was convinced that I would go into the industry right after graduation. Thus, while I have a significant amount of industry experience, I feel super far behind on preparing for grad school. Love to hear your thoughts. What can I do to prepare myself for applying to PhD programs and working in a research environment in general? Planning to join a lab, but are there other things that I should do or consider?" So, Barry, what can they do to consider preparing for grad school?
I think if you're going to apply to PhD stuff, just from my own experience, please just do it as soon as you can. Don't do what I've done, which is try and think, I didn't even think about doing a PhD after my initial degree or anything like that. I was just straight into work, straight into industry. Now I've had a go at doing a PhD once and had to pause it because work life gets in the way, all that sort of stuff. So if you've got a chance of doing it early, crack on and do it, because you won't get a better time, I don't think, than to do it and to dedicate time to it. In terms of working in a lab environment, well, I don't know. If only I knew of a digital media lab that worked in human factors, and was a great way of meeting people. Then maybe I would go and join that. But I can't think of anything else.
Is this always going to be perpetually an advertisement for the lab?
Yes.
So look, there's a couple things that you can do that will really help you out here. One, understand the process for each institution that you are looking to apply to, because it can be different for every single place. And have a spreadsheet of that process. Make sure that you have marked down what state that you're at along the way at every point, right? That is one easy, really high return thing that you can do, is understanding the process at each place, understanding what you need to do by when the deadlines are, assuming you're applying to multiple places. The other things that you can do, well, inform yourself on human factors, right? I mean, that is kind of the big thing. You've discovered the field, and that's awesome. I'm super happy for you. We love the field too. That's why we're here. Learn more about it as much as you can. Come into that thing as prepared as you can be. And the third thing I would offer for advice is to really research the faculty that you are hoping to work with. I think the faculty relationship that you will have with your mentor is a huge thing that often, I don't want to say it often goes overlooked, but I think it is a critically important aspect to your success. If you have a good relationship with somebody, or you guys agree on a lot of things and they can teach you in ways that you never thought that you could be taught, then you are going to have a more successful outlook. So I don't know, do your research. Is that too on the nose for the last question?
No, spot on, I think.
All right. Let's talk about this last one. Struggling with scope creep. This one is by Trick Prompt 5613 on the UX Research subreddit. "Hi, all. I'm a UX researcher working with a very ambitious product exec. They're really excited to have me join their product team and conduct user research. However, what was supposed to be conducting usability testing with 10 participants has turned into me conducting user interviews or using user testing, product requirement gatherings with as many users as we can get. They're thinking like 20 plus in the same time span we originally agreed upon. Additionally, I typically run usability testing one-to-one, share the recordings, and present findings. However, this exec wants 5 other people to join each meeting. I'm worried about bias creeping in. I will do my best to expectations set, but find myself having trouble pushing back with someone who is above me at work. Any advice? Have you been in this situation before?" Barry, this sounds familiar?
Oh, does it ever? Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, this is day whatever of being a human factors UX person. This is bread and butter. No, great that you've got loads of buy-in and they really want to do user research. That's awesome. The bit about wanting to double the number of participants. That's fine as long as they've also come up with the time machine with which to do it. If you've already planned for doing 10, and we know how long, you've made your assumptions, you've done your planning, you know that you can do 10 people in the time. There is literally not enough hours in the day to do 20, or to do them to the quality that you've already specified. So you need to go back and explain that. You can do 20 if they give you twice as much time, or they give you twice as much resource, or whatever it is. If you, in terms of the usability testing, if you usually run them one-to-one, I've got no real problem with other people wanting to join the usability testing as such, as long as you can set the ground rules. It's your usability testing. If they are coming to observe, that's fine. If they want to be part of the engagement, that's fine, but it's pre-planned and it's rehearsed. If they just think they're going to go in there and as you've sort of alluded to, jump in and come up with stuff, they're not in the room. It is your engagement, and that's what you're employed for. That you have the hopefully the authority and the respect to be able to do that. If you get across that and they still want to do it in another way, well, you've done the best you can. We've sort of said before, pick your battles. Some what is critical to you in getting the job done. If you have 5 people interrupting the user, the usability testing, is that really a disaster as opposed to making sure that you only do the 10 participants? It's kind of up to you. But unfortunately, I'd like to say that this only happens very rarely, but it is the constant battle you have with trying to run any sort of research program. Nick, what do you think? Are you any different advice?
Not really. You will occasionally run into these situations where somebody else organizes the research and you're just kind of there, or people hijack your meeting for other motives. I think the best thing that you can do is expectation set and say, hey, look, I'm going to give you all an opportunity to ask questions, but you need to let me do my job here and do this thing up front, so that way we get what we need out of this thing. There's definitely sort of the benefit to education does not equal action, right? We know that, but explaining things in a way that's easily digestible to this exec might, you might be like, hey, we agreed on 10 participants. Let me tell you, I need to spend X amount of hours preparing for each interview. I need to spend X amount of hours analyzing each thing. I need to spend X amount of hours actually engaging with and setting up time, all this stuff. Explain the time commitments and really push back and say, look, I can do 10. I cannot do 20. And if we start including more people into it, it's going to degrade the quality of data because we have X, Y, Z. I think if you sit down and explain it to them, hopefully they'll be receptive, especially if there's buy-in, which it seems like there is. I don't know, just something to consider. Mm-hmm. All right, it's time for one more thing. It's just the part of the show where we talk about one more thing. Barry, what's your one more thing this week?
I'm going to do a twofer. It's been a while since I've done a twofer.
Okay, 2 more things.
The first thing was I did my first executive meeting as president-elect today. It was very exciting. That was cool. But no, the real thing I wanted to mention was I decided to. It's not often I get the time to pick up new books, a new book on methodology. So I picked up one on black box thinking, which I thought was very cool. But then when I was looking at it on Amazon, other purchasing platforms are available, and the guy who wrote this one on black box thinking has also written like 5 other books on very, very similar things, which has led me to buying all of the books as one package. I'm holding up now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different books by the same author, looking at black box thinking, looking at where sport teaches us about achieving success, about rebel ideas, and about Bounce, the myth of talent and the power of practice. And so where I was going to buy one book, I've now got 5 books to read in the next sort of week or so, and I'm actually quite excited about doing so.
I'm happy for you. I've been trying to get back into the book reading myself. You can see I have 2 over my shoulders because it's only 1 month. And so I'm trying to get into that too. But my one more thing this week is we're on TikTok. I mentioned it earlier. It's an interesting experience from putting stuff up there. From their perspective, I see what they're doing. They're boosting the first couple of videos that you have to boost others to kind of promote yourself to other people as kind of the hook. You get so many views on it and you go, oh, this is great. And then it drops down. It's sneaky. It's predatory. And I don't like the practice, but please go follow us. That's it. Anyway, that's going to be it for today, everyone. If you like this episode and enjoy some of the discussion about robots in our lives, I'll encourage you to go listen to episode 217, where we talk about the Tesla bots and how they might be able to improve your life. Comment wherever you're listening with what you think of the story this week. For more in-depth discussion, you can always join us on our Discord community. You can visit our official website, like I mentioned, sign up for our newsletter, stay up to date with all the latest Human Factors news. If you like what you hear, you want to support the show, there's a couple things you can do. One, wherever you're at right now, leave us a 5-star review. That's free for you to do. Really helps us out. Two, you can always tell your friends about us. If you have like-minded Human Factors UXE friends that love this type of stuff, let them know. And three, if you have the financial means, you can always support us on Patreon. As always, links to all of our socials and our website are in the description of this episode. I want to thank Mr. Barry Kirby for being on the show today. Where can our listeners go and find you if they want to talk where to get a burger prepared by a robot?
You can find me across all social media, but specifically at Twitter on Baz_K. Come and hit up some of my interviews when I actually get some new ones published at 1202podcast.com.
As for me, I've been your host, Nick Roome. You can find me on our Discord and across social media at Nick_Roome. Thanks again for tuning into Human Factors Cast. Until next time,
it
depends. Post show, we did it.
Bang on time. That
was perfect. Wow. Yeah. I might have to do some choppy chop, but that was really close.
You were within 30 seconds, I would have thought.
Yeah, I think I was very close. Very close. Yeah, if you're watching live, stick around. We're going to do a post show here. I actually think, Barry, is this the week that we're going to record the recap? Are you good for that? I forgot to mention that before.
I was going to say, we can either do that this week or we can do it in one of next week.
Yeah. Next week would get real dicey, I think. Just because I want to be a little prepared here. Let's see here. Let me see what we have. Because I know we had talked about notes.
We started doing some notes.
Yeah, we did some notes, some-ish notes. What was it called?
We were going to do half.
Yeah,
because we were going to do half, weren't we? So I'm happy either way, to be honest.
Well, I think what we were going to do is kind of the 30-minute. I don't even think it'll take 30 minutes. Maybe this will be 20 minutes of us just chatting, and then from there we can dice up the interviews that you got.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I think with that, then let me. I have this up. Do you have the notes?
I don't have the. Why can't I find the? Can you just
find the notes? Yeah, I can chuck it in our chat for you. If you're sticking around, this is such a treat for you. You get a twofer tonight. You get conference coverage and a regular episode. As if Barry and myself are not tired enough to talk through another 20 minutes, although we usually do a post show, so that's good. There is the document for you, sir. It is EHF.
Yeah.
Cool. So let me just I'm gonna introduce you as president-elect.
Oh, dude. My head will be so big.
So inflated. All right. Let's see here. Okay, so I think we're good on my end. This will take 20 minutes or so. Do you want to throw in some notes there?
Yeah.
All right. So you know what? While you're taking notes, I am just going to quickly recap. Algorithms are BS, and I really hate the way that platforms work because it really is driven on that outrage and engagement piece. And I'm sorry that soapbox was so big when I was standing on it, but really, this is where this is where legislation can step in and say, look, we got a regulation of algorithms, because that can be very dangerous when they're built in the wrong way, especially when you consider things like racial bias in algorithms. And really, I feel like some of these groups that we're talking about and some of these platforms are militant, and it's scary. I don't know. If you're watching live, what do you think? I'm curious to see what others think of this. Can be quite the adventure. So while we're waiting for Barry to type up his notes, this is going to be on Ergonomics and Human Factors conference. That's it. Ergonomics and Human Factors conference. It's put on by the Chartered Institute of... I always get it wrong. Ergonomics and Human Factors. CIEHF. Yeah. Chartered Institute of Ergonomics and Human Factors. And so this is a conference that Barry went to. Was it last month already? It was already last month. I can't believe that.
Oh, it was? Because it's now May, isn't it?
It is May.
Yeah. Right. I think I've got enough to be able to waffle about, to give in-depth discourse. I'm going to write there. We have the
yeah.
Oh, yeah, I am good.
You're good. All right. So this is going to be a little odd because we're killing the music in the post show here. But we're going to kill the music here and we're going to say...
do you not need to come out of... Can you just go straight to a record again? Or do you need to come out of it and do another...
No, I'm good. We don't need to come out and go back in. I could just chop this up later.
Check you and your skills.
Look at those skills. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to call this EHF 2022 bonus coverage. What have we used in the past? Remember?
I don't think
recap maybe. I don't know. Yeah, I think that's fine. So we'll just add this little... Oh no, where'd it go? EHF 2022. Yes, I could have waited to kill the music until we were actually ready.
Yeah, because you killed the the vibe.
Yeah. Deepfakes are really freaky as well. Yeah, that's a whole separate conversation. Disinformation, deepfakes, and
disinformation is something I'm really interested in, and actually I'm hoping to get into a bit of work. So I'm trying to weave that into some of the climate stuff that we're doing as well. So maybe that's something we could talk about in the lab or something.
Yeah, let's do it. All right, so this is going to be weird because there's going to be another intro. It's just a way for me to flag where it's at. So we'll play the intro and then I will do an intro again. And in fact, it is not September 18th that we're recording this on.
It's 12th of May.
Yeah, 12 May.
Or do you just want to say in May? Because we're gonna do this, and then we're just gonna hack stuff together onto it.
Yeah, we're recording this part of the conversation. Yeah, that's fine. All right, hey, we're gonna be right back. With this thing. Oh wait, no, whoops, wrong button. Sometimes we get little treats here on the show. All right, here we go.
Welcome to Human Factors Cast, your weekly podcast for human factors, psychology, and design.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a special conference bonus episode of Human Factors Cast. It feels like it's been a little bit since we've done one of these. We're recording this live on May 12th. This is 2022. I'm your host, Nick Roome, and on this episode, we're recapping EHF, Ergonomics and Human Factors Conference 2022, with somebody who's a regular guest of the show, but today he's going to be on in a little bit different of a capacity. Mr. Barry Kirby, President-elect of CIEHF, the Chartered Institute of Ergonomics and Human Factors. Barry, welcome back to the show. It feels weird to welcome you in a different capacity. So, hi.
Hi, great to be here.
Great to have you. Barry, can I get your general thoughts on EHF before we dig into everything?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ergonomics and Human Factors 2022 was brilliant, quite frankly. It was a test of so many different things. Having that hybrid of a live and a virtual event, of having just basically getting back together as a community, and being able to talk, to be able to have a glass of wine, to be able to chew over the paper you just listened to. And from a very personal perspective, it was certainly the live element was the first time I've been to the conference, was my first time of meeting people as president-elect. And so I looked at it through, I think, through very different eyes. Of being able to see what works, what doesn't, what were people liking, and to almost take that usability view, that research view of is it delivering what we want to deliver. So yeah, it was a very new and very interesting experience for me.
So I realize we kind of jumped the shark here. What is EHF? Like, let's talk about what it actually is a little bit. Can you explain what the conference is about?
Yeah, so Ergonomics and Human Factors is organised by the Chartered Institute, the Chartered Institute of Ergonomics and Human Factors here in the UK. It is the flagship conference for the Chartered Institute. It is an international conference. Historically, it's always been over 3-4 days, based in different parts of the UK. It's been that one place where people can come to, and there's normally, as I guess any typical conference has, it has the streams on different human factor subjects, ranging through from defense all the way through to health and that type of thing. So from that perspective, it's normally very typical what you'd expect. What I do like about EHF is it normally has a really good social side to it as well. So before the pandemic, there would always be a 2 nights of entertainment. The first night was normally some sort of quiz or an event, which Tina Worthy, who's one of the staff at the conference, and we'll be hearing a little bit from her later on. She normally does this sort of quiz, but then they have done other things as well, which there was like a murder mystery dinner night where on one of the previous ones where I got to take part, and I was one of the actors in that, which was a very different thing. And normally the second night has always been the conference dinner, which has always been a nice opportunity to get on your best clothes and have some nice food and some nice conversation. So it's always had that real good balance between doing the learning stuff during the day and doing the social, the interacting stuff, not only in the coffee breaks but in the evenings as well.
Yeah, we call that drinking after hours networking. That is what we call it. So I want to talk a little bit about the venue, right? Because in the past, in the last couple of years, we had this pandemic that we all kind of lived through, which is very traumatizing in a lot of ways. What has it been like? You mentioned kind of these sort of get-togethers, these gatherings. What has the venue itself been like? The structure in the physical capacity, but then how did it adapt over the sort of pandemic phase?
Yeah, so historically pre-pandemic, it was normally always a physical conference. So, and I guess here in terms of organization, it's quite generic in that respect. There was it would go through either different hotels or different conference suites. So physically, it was in that sort of very generic, wherever we were going to have it at that time, consisting of you'd have your keynotes, it would have your then break out to your streams, and consist of either lectures, workshops, that type of stuff. So I think I don't think I'm doing anybody disservice by saying it would be quite a traditional conference, obviously with the associated bar and all that sort of stuff in for evenings. During the pandemic, it really stepped up its game now, and again, I think I'd be not putting anybody's nose out of joint by saying, actually, I think the CIHF excelled delivering the online conference when they did in the was it 2020 and then 2021. 2020, they made the decision to go to virtual conference within, I think it was like a week or 2 weeks, because our conference was is in April, and obviously we went into lockdown in sort of that March time. And so, or early April, and so they had to turn it around. We sort of obviously we knew something was happening, we knew something was coming, but the CIHF team and the secretariat turned round that to be a virtual conference. So you had one stream live, but also with the chat facilities and all that sort of stuff. And they still ran that over 2 days, and they did that in 2020 and 2021 to great effect. I think people stepped up their game in terms of recording their papers and doing, being present in the chat, and realizing you can actually have that sort of chat and being able to. We had better attendance at that than anything else, because I think people could attend from all around the world, and did so. And so that was really, really effective. And then this year was really good as well, because we took a review of saying, right, well, what worked well during the pandemic? What did we like? What was it missing? What did we like about what was happening before? And we basically did them both, which was fantastic. So we this year we had the two themes. We had a virtual session, and then we had the in-person session separated by a couple of weeks. So you didn't feel like you were having to go bang, 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 bang and take a whole lot of time out. But we did the virtual session, and that for me was fantastic. So the first session on the first day was dedicated to sustainability, which anybody who's listened to anything that I've been talking about recently, I've been very much into the whole climate thing, the whole climate ergonomics piece that we've been driving, and we got the ability to do the opening interview, the opening keynote, those couple of papers that me and my team were delivering, as well as have a really good panel session. But what was really neat about that panel session, about that entire session, is the chair was chairing it from Australia. One of the key speakers that we had as part of it was coming from South Africa, and then 3 of us were coming from Wales here in the UK, and it was just seamless. It just worked, and then people were commenting in the chat and asking questions from literally around the world. So you wouldn't have been able to get that sort of accessibility by doing it live. You won't be able to get that sort of interaction by doing it live. But what it did miss was that ability to have, the corridor conversations, the coffee conversations, the in the bar, the conversations, and just generally that the more fun aspects, the more, we sort of say network, they're generally just having a laugh with people, which we've so sorely needed over the past few years. And so we did a whole load of that in the live session. So it was only 2 days. I went down on the night before, and so I had grand plans of going down the night before and having some food and getting an early night, because I said this was my first time as president-elect. I didn't want to disgrace myself or anything like that. I still didn't go to bed until about 1 o'clock in the morning. So it was just so nice to be able to see people and talk to people. But having that live event, then the second night we had the dinner, which was again nice just to be able to sit and chat to people. But during the sessions themselves, we had packed sessions. We had 3 streams on both days, and they were packed with both live presentations, and there was some because people were now so used to recording their presentations. We had backup presentations, so there was a few people who dropped out right at the last minute because of COVID and other reasons. And we were able to say, rather than having to really juggle around with the schedule, we're like, well, we've got your video here. We can just play that, and it works, and it's brilliant. So we learned a lot, and it was really neat. Rather than having a quiz this time, we had a magician.
I was going to ask. I saw magician in the notes. I was waiting for it. I was like, you haven't talked about the magician.
So instead of so normally, like I said, Tina would normally do a quiz in the past, but we had a magician, and the guy was really good. Who did it, and he did some really, really quite impressive stuff. Though we did spend most of the session most of the dinner trying to work out how he did what he did, and probably worked out 90% of it fairly quickly. But when he was trying to tell jokes and stuff like that, he would also then say, so what is this human factors? And so human factors he would get a massive cheer for all this other stuff he wouldn't. So then he would just randomly turn around and just say human factors and get a big cheer from the room. And he's one of these things, he didn't know quite why he was getting a cheer, but he knew he was getting a cheer. And so that worked quite well. But again, it was just interesting to have a different bunch of entertainment. The other bit that worked really well with this whole hybrid live virtual bit is normally they would have the AGM as part of the live conference. During the pandemic, obviously you couldn't do that, so we had a virtual AGM. We had more people attend the AGM than we ever have done, because it was easy just to dip into and go to, and anybody could access it. You didn't have to be going to the conference, and so that's what we've done. We've kept the AGM virtual. which meant
really quick, just for those who don't know, AGM.
Your AGM is your annual general meeting where all your officers and your representatives, the people who your trustees and all that sort of thing, they're all elected or confirmed, and their elections are confirmed. So you know who your president is going to be, your president elect, which is me, and all that sort of stuff. So we knew before going into the live bit of the conference that what the positions were going to be, because it also meant that we could actually have a first sort of exec meeting there as well, a first meeting at the live conference, which was also incredibly useful. So yeah, there was a lot I think we've learned. There's a lot of stuff that I think we did get really right this time. We can improve, we definitely can, because I think you always can. But I think as a first event coming out of COVID, I think the team did a fantastic job. And going back to that idea about this was my first time of looking at this from a president-elect perspective, I guess it really made me appreciate just how much work and effort goes into doing a conference, which I perhaps hadn't appreciated before. So you've got the entire staff team, of which the CIHF has quite a small staff team compared to with the likes of HFES and others. There's a small number of people doing an awful lot of work, and they just make magic happen in the background. And it's amazing. Then you've got the conference secretariat themselves, who normally are volunteers and that type of thing. Again, being really cool, just making sure everything flows and just making sure everything is brilliant. Then you've got the conference team who puts all the papers together and all that sort of stuff. So many people have put in so much effort to make something look seamless and flawless. I just find it stunning.
Yeah,
that they come together.
It really is one of those things where you realize just how few people are actually involved in the conference prep in a lot of cases. And it really just pulls the whole thing together. And yeah, it's kind of really interesting to look at that sometimes, because you're like, how are you doing all this? What are you, the magician? Anyway, so let's get into sort of your experience with the thing, right? I mean, we talked a little bit about the venue. We talked about what it is. I think I want to hear some of the kind of key takeaways that you have. Like, what did you find interesting? What are some key themes that you heard about, watched, listened to, participated in, etc.?
So one of the things that happened right from the start of the live conference, which was the new president, Alex Steadman, he encouraged us all to go and engage in a theme that we're not used to, that outside of our comfort zone, which people say that, and yeah, but this time I was like, you know what, I'm going to. And so most of my background is in defense and technology and tools and methods and that type of thing, aviation. So I spent quite a lot of my time in health, and there's sort of a theme around well-being and a theme around health, and I spent quite a lot of time in them, which was fascinating. And there was some really good discussion. So particularly in the live bit, there was some really good, interesting discussions around the applications of different methods, such as safety 1 and safety 2. And there was real good discussion about why some people thought one was better than the other, and how the evidence base had come out, how they're trying to develop different ways of patients being able to engage with the with staff and with the medical professionals, and give them better awareness about when things were maybe going wrong and how they could input and things like that. And it really gave me a different perspective on how I see the health industry, particularly when you go to a doctor's or you go to a hospital, your experience. So I'd actually gone the week after, or the week or so after the conference, and went to get some blood tests. And it was because of some of the discussions that were going on in that health thing that made me really think about the usability of a hospital from the moment you walk in the door, and some of that stuff. So that was really, really fascinating. The other bit that was really good is we had a keynote from the Ministry of Transport around where they'd done some experimentation and some ideas about how to get better messaging across for wearing face masks and things during COVID, about being more respectful around other people and your behavior. And they'd done a whole bunch of different things about looking at different ways of projecting influence. So do you put a positive message? So like if you wear a mask, you could be saving your neighbor, or a negative message, or a more stern message around you should be wearing a mask or you'll be fined type of thing. And so just looking at different ways of influencing. But what was fantastic and fascinating was the amount of people, because they were doing with basically people who were out there, they could have massive participation numbers. I mean, you're talking about N being, so the number of participants being like tens and hundreds of thousands of people, rather than just like 10. Yeah. And so they could really drive out some really good science out of what they've been doing, and really influence, ironically, influence how we do things and how we do some of that message. So them sort of things were fascinating. There was the automation is obviously a big thing, and we had one of the quite a few different talks around automation, not only around the obvious of cars and things like that, but also exoskeletons and things like that. And we actually had a live demo of some exoskeletons, which was great, and you could go and have a play with them. In terms of talks, the one that really, there was some really fascinating ones, and what I like about this conference is it's really there for people. If you're giving your first conference talk, it's a really safe space to do it. Everybody's really friendly. You might get some tough questions, but they're not unfair questions. It's a really nice place to. But also, there's some people who can stand up and really give some breadth of experience of what they've been to. And the one that did it for me here, I mean, I also had the privilege of introducing it, was Susie Broadbent. Now, Susie's somebody who's worked in the human factors domain, primarily in defense for a number of years, which is why I know her. But she gave the annual Institute lecture, and really she gave it around, fundamentally, why do we need human factors? What's human factors all about from her perspective? And she come at this from a really practical perspective. So when we're trying to, highlighting the fact that we would love to be able to do, our methods properly, and, particularly in the defense world, you'd love high participant numbers. You'd like to get a properly, beautifully crafted methodology on how you're going to engage around whatever the topic is. But sometimes it's just not practical. Sometimes you just can't do it. And do you just get down and dirty with what you've got? Or do you just call the whole thing off? Well, obviously, you never call the whole thing off. You make do with what you've got, and you try and make the best of every situation. But it's not often you get somebody who's willing to stand up and say that. And it did cause quite nicely a bit of almost controversy afterwards. So I'm the one there who's chairing the session, have to handle the questions. And you immediately got some of that academic thing saying, well, I think it's almost irresponsible, people standing up and saying that that you shouldn't take into account, proper academic methods, so proper methods and stuff. And I was like, well, and Susie quite rightly stood up for herself and said, that's not what I was saying. If you can do the proper methods, you absolutely should, because that's what they're there for, and they're good. But you quite often, the grand scheme of things, you can't. And so part of what we're trying to do is, as human factors practitioners, is tailor what we're doing as best we possibly can. But the entire talk was fascinating, and she's gone on now to be work in a slightly different domain, where she's actually an investigator and using them skills going forward as well. So it was really interesting to see where she was going next, but also bringing in some of them key experiences from her experience and her career. But just that bringing together of academic and professional was real. You could almost see it was really valuable for the new people, the people who are either students or new into the profession, going, okay, that's the way that real life works. I like that. But also for some of us who've been around for maybe slightly longer, going, yeah, I'm pleased somebody's had the ability to go get up and say that, because quite often we all know it, but we don't often say it. So,
yeah.
So then for me, I mean, in terms of big moments, what am I going to take away? I mean, firstly, it was an incredible experience being, having that thing as a president-elect. That was seeing it through new eyes. That was fantastic. Being live was just brilliant. This time, I so didn't take it for granted this time. It was very much of that whole piece around doing some really cool stuff, really talking to people and engaging. Love that. Love the ability in the virtual sessions to be promoting the sustainability bit. That is something I think all of us are taking a lot more seriously. So talking to people who worked in this field a lot, like the likes of like Andrew Thatcher and people like that, and hopefully building some bridges there, which I think is really good. But one of the things I did quite like as a thing was I did one of the wrap up talks at the end to wrap up the conference and send people on their merry way, and it was just one of the comments I made, which I think is so true, is during the pandemic, we could have all just sat at home. And in fact, you listen to some communities and you think that everybody did just sit at home and do nothing. But, everybody could have sat at home and do nothing and nobody thought any different. Nobody would blame them. But all the papers, all the research that had gone on was all reflecting on things that happened through COVID-19, be it in like running airlines or be it, working in the health industry or whatever it was. So clearly people have been thinking, people have been doing their research. People hadn't turned around and said, oh, we'll just take 2 years off. People have got some really solid stuff. So we've got some really solid learning out of COVID-19 to then take forward and do bigger and better things with. Everybody took that opportunity. And I just thought that was amazing. So to have that honor of being able to wrap up and reflect on some of them things was just a distinct honor. So yeah, there was so much more that went on as well, but I think we've probably covered all the high points.
The high points. Any other key takeaways that you took away from this conference that you will take with you in the future going forward?
Yeah, I think so. I think this whole live virtual thing is a revelation. It sounds obvious now because we've all been living it, but that whole being able to optimize for both and do both, I'm still not entirely convinced on hybrid, which I know we different episodes we've talked about that in the past.
I'll get you there.
Yeah, maybe. But this whole being able to do, get the, do the virtual bit and really use that virtual bit to its maximum extent, and then do the live and really make the most of that live bit as well, and really squeeze both methods for all you can get, is just absolute genius. And we can keep on honing it, and we can then also teach other people what we've done in our lessons, and hopefully other people will be able to get the best of it as well. But that and the people behind it who make that happen, make it all happen and make it all just happen like it's just it's like just pixie dust in the background is brilliant.
All right, Barry. Well, we've heard from you. Now let's go hear from some folks who went to the conference. I understand you've brought us a prepared clip.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we'll have there's a couple of clips and a different number of people you'll hear from including people who are organizing it, people who are part of the secretariat, some of the people who were session chairs, and just some people who just attended.
All right. Well, here they are. And that's going to be it for today, everyone. Let us know what you think of our coverage. You can hang out with us on our Slack or Discord. I'm going to redo that because we don't have a Slack. Right. That's it for today, everyone. Let us know what you think of our coverage. You can hang out with us on our Discord or get to us on any of our social channels. You can always visit our official website, sign up for our newsletter, stay up to date with all the latest Human Factors news. If you like what you hear, you want to support the show, you can leave us a 5-star review wherever you're listening. If you liked Barry's recap of the conference, you can always tell your friends about us or the conference. Get them involved. Or if you have the financial means to do so, please consider supporting us on Patreon. As always, links to all of our socials and our website are in the description of this episode. Special thank you to everyone who called in for their contributions and being on the show today. We've provided a few links in the description of this episode so you can find out more information about the conference. Speaking of which, Barry, where can our listeners go find out more about EHF?
So you can find out more about the Ergonomics and Human Factors Conference at ergonomics.org.uk. Or
and
just go straight to... Oh, that's all right.
That's fine. And where can our listeners find you?
And you can find me across all socials, but also specifically on Twitter, Baz_K, or go and listen to my podcast at 1202podcast.com.
As for me, I've been your host, Nick Roome. You can find me across social media at Nick_Roome. Barry, you know the drill.
I certainly do. It depends.
It depends. Thank you all so much for hanging out with us tonight as we did 2 shows in one. We'll be back next week with our last show, and then we'll present this thing again packaged up as a thing. Thanks for sticking around. We'll be back next week. Appreciate y'all tuning in live. Until then, bye-bye.